Today on the channel, we are reviewing one of the most horrifying nuclear war film depictions that I've ever seen. I first watched this film, Threads, which was a BBC production probably 17 years ago or so. It coincidentally came out in the year 1984, and I don't think that to date any film has approximated the sheer horror and the austere, gloomy, somber feeling that this movie captures. The reason why I wanted to review this film again is because of the nuance. This movie covers all of those little subtleties that lots of new films don't quite capture. Everything that you would expect to happen in a post-nuclear world, it touches on. Today, I really want to highlight and emphasize these details because there's a lot of lessons to be learned here. So, without further ado, let's watch the show.
In an urban society, everything connects. Each person's needs are fed by the skills of many others. Our lives are woven together in a fabric. But
the great thing about this film is the timelessness of it. The way this movie depicts what happens before, during, and after collapse will largely endure today.
the connections that make society strong also make it vulnerable.
He said, the connections today that make society strong also make it vulnerable. That single sentence encapsulates everything you need to know about the motivation towards emergency preparedness in the modern era. The great thing about these old, raunchy, dirty, grimy looking films of the 1980s is that they just capture the bleak, barren, despondent kind of feeling better than we ever could today in the polished 4K videography realm of things. Like, we could never make this movie today in a way which would just capture that derelict condition that would be there after the collapse as they could back in the day. I love it. I hate it. It's scary, but it's the best depiction you're going to get.
It's peaceful up here, isn't it? Oh, I'd love to live out in the country, wouldn't you, Jimmy?
What the heck?
Why not?
It's dead. Not to do. Just imagine living down there. Take you an hour to get to the nearest boozer.
Oh, I know. But the air's lovely. Do you know, I love it this time of year. The spring coming on. Look, you see the leaves just coming out on that bush over there? What are you looking at?
Trying to make out where our house is. Wish I had a pair of binoculars. See floodlights at United Ground, look.
Saturday, March 20, with the news, John Barker.
Oh, what time is it?
There's been further fighting in Iran
No,
between
half-time
government
scores will
and
wait in a minute.
says the civil war there.
Oh, honestly. We've come out here for a drive. We're surrounded by all this countryside and all you can think.
Okay, so the movie starts out with these people in a car and they're overlooking a city. They're contrasting rural and urban life. And on the radio, there's a broadcast that says that there's a civil war in Iran. And so we know from this point forward that this world war is going to start in the Middle East. This, of course, is incredibly prescient considering the current situation going on in Iran. It's also a biblical reference to Gog and Magog.
Where are you going?
From 1, Manchester United 0. West Ham United 2, Queen's Park Rangers 0. Division 2, Barnsley 1, Derby 0.
There you are. It's peace offering. Not much smell to it though.
Carlisle 0.
It's lovely.
2, Huddersfield 0.
Yeah, they're supposed to bring good luck, innit?
Athletic 0. Middlesbrough 2, Oldham Athletic
they say.
1. Newcastle 0, Swansea.
Wonder if it'll bring me in.
Portsmouth 0, Brighton and Hove Albion 1. Division 3.
The first lesson here is that if there's a high risk of a world war, you may want to postpone conceiving a child, because that's going to make your life a living hell, as we're going to soon find out.
AFC Bournemouth 2, Wimbledon 2, Brentford 0, Bristol Rovers 2.
You don't want to be carrying around babies in the apocalypse.
Wanderers 1,
At least not till you get a good foothold.
This film, shot secretly by a West German television crew on Tuesday, shows one of the Soviet convoys on the move in northern Iran. The convoys were first spotted by United States satellites on Monday, moving across 3 of the mountain passes leading from the Soviet Union. The Soviet foreign minister has defended the incursions and has accused the United States of deliberately prompting last week's coup in Iran.
Clearly, we have the divide between Russia, who is fighting on the side of one side of the Iranians, and the United States, who has fomented a coup in Iran, which is very similar to the situation we could very likely be moving into. The only difference is there's no longer a Cold War, there's no longer a Soviet Union, but Russia is still mostly aligned in this kind of manner with the Iranians.
Speaking on his arrival in Vienna, Mr. Gromyko claims the Soviet vehicles were responding to appeals from the legitimate government.
Are you being serious? Of course I'm being serious. I'm not being more serious than life.
American covert activities in Iran in the period immediately preceding the coup.
So we know that this situation is already kind of serious because they're playing the news in a pub.
As
Jimmy? Are you sure?
The United States of the danger
Definitely.
of what he called an easy return.
I'm normally as regular as clockwork. Anyway, what if I am? It's not the end of the world, is it?
And now a look at programmes later this evening on BBC One.
We see this image, we know that this war is going to be fought over oil. So they show the oil fields in Iran near the Persian Gulf. And of course we have Moscow hits back at US. So we know that this is a proxy war between the United States and Moscow.
And don't forget number 24 today.
What?
I said don't forget number 24 today. You're going to run your ear in with them things on all the time, you know.
Honestly, Jimmy, you want a bloody hat scene to.
I think you want something else seen to as well.
Don't blame me, it's not my fault.
Whose fault is it then, you daft boy?
Don't go blaming it all on Ruth, Jimmy. That's not fair.
We learn now that he's knocked up his girlfriend, and that's not good because shit's going to hit the fan here.
Anyway, it's irrelevant who's to blame now. No, look. Point is, what are you going to do about it?
You got to get
You're
yourself
gonna
a
get
job,
married.
lad.
What for? Because we want to, what do you think?
You don't have to, you know, Jimmy. I wouldn't want you thinking we were pushing you into it.
Nobody's pushing us into out. It's what we want, we've decided.
I suppose you've talked about an abortion.
Of course we have. But neither of us want that. Want to get married and have a baby.
Mum, what's that mean? Abortion?
Michael!
Never mind what it means. You get on with your game. It's nothing to do with you.
In other words, the dormouse. The dormouse needs to live.
I'm thinking of getting engaged anyway. So it don't make much difference, really. It just brought it forward a bit, that's all.
You know what you're doing, Jimmy. It's a hell of a time to be starting a family in the middle of a recession.
What are you doing with that?
I'm not hurting it.
The reason why this film is so timeless is that despite the fact that the technology that this kid is using is primitive by today's standards, you still are shown a contrast in generations where the child is consumed by his little handheld video game and the television set, whereas the older folks are not as preoccupied with these things. And this is something that, of course, endures well into today, regardless of the actual sophistication of the technology in question.
Ah, Jimmy's getting married.
Hiya.
I might be why.
Well, it's a bit sudden, isn't it? You're not even engaged.
How do you know? Anyway, it's not to do you, so keep your nose out.
Are you getting married in a church or in a registry office?
Alison, what's an abortion?
Michael, I've told you once.
Oh, so that's it.
I'll give you a good hiding, lad, if you don't learn to keep your mouth shut.
What for? I ain't done anything yet.
Are you going to shut up?
Copies would have become scarce.
I hope you two are both satisfied now.
What are you blaming me for? I haven't done anything wrong.
Here in Britain,
The time now 7:30, Douglas Barton with tonight's headlines. The United States has hinted it may send troops to the Middle East if the Russians don't move their forces out of Iran. The Prime Minister has joined the chorus of Western leaders calling for immediate withdrawal.
So you have these media broadcasts which are building up the crises that is going to, of course, precipitate the nuclear war that's about to happen. And the buildup is, I would say, fairly plausible. You have the United States getting ready to send troops into Iran, which, of course, will be the flashpoint for the beginning of World War III.
And has spoken of a serious threat to world peace.
An excellent character.
4 people were killed today on the M6 motorway in Staffordshire when their car was in collision with a heavy tanker. The accident happened at the junction with...
Here they show us the nuclear reactors, the water cooling systems, and they do that to inject into people's minds that nuclear power plants are going to be a factor. Back in those days, these things were ticking time bombs in and of themselves because, of course, they could go into meltdown. Nowadays, there's some safeguard systems, but there's still going to be a high risk. And if these things are targeted by nuclear weapons, then that is just a nasty situation. So they show here the main industries of this particular city. Why that is important is because this is likely going to be a nuclear target, because it can produce all of these things. During the Cold War, the counter-value strategy was to take out anything that could potentially be used to rebuild a war machine. So that included steel, engineering, and chemicals, in addition to military bases, missile silos, and all those things.
Do you think we'll get on all right?
No, I can't see why not. They're ever so nice.
Just wish we were meeting in different circumstances, that's all.
Making it sound like a funeral.
It's a bit embarrassing, isn't it?
Indian Ocean put on high alert.
Ought to have been a happy occasion.
Debate in the United
It is a happy occasion.
This morning's report came
Well, I'm happy anyway.
most Americans.
I must say, it's brought out a very determined streak in you, as this.
There's been a serious incident involving a United States warship in the waters off the coast of Iran. No further details are given in the story, attributed to the paper's defense correspondent. However, one rumour being heard increasingly in the capital this morning says the vessel is a US submarine that has disappeared whilst on routine patrol in the area.
Okay, so we know that the initial kinetic exchange is in the Persian Gulf with a warship or a submarine, and it involves the US Navy and quite possibly the Russian Navy. So it's something that happens in the waterways surrounding Iran.
Did you hear what I said, Gordon? Mrs. Kemper here.
You know, people look so much more real without makeup back then. I think that's why this movie resonates with people so well, because the people aren't as fake.
Has alarmed many people by seeming to confirm that something very serious has happened. A Pentagon spokesman has refused to be drawn one way or the other on the crisis, parrying all reporters' questions at his regular morning.
Do come.
Mum, Mrs. Kemp. Mr. Kemp.
Mr. Lee.
How do you do?
How do you do?
Dad, Mr. and Mrs. Kemp.
Oh, hello again. How do you do? How do you do, Mrs. Kemp?
Do go through.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
BBC News at 8 o'clock. The Soviet Union has protested strongly to the United States about what it calls dangerous provocations by American warships in the Gulf of Oman yesterday. This follows an incident in which serious damage was caused to the Soviet cruiser Kirov when she was in collision with the US destroyer Callahan.
It's in a bit of a state, but it's got possibilities.
I'd have that door stripped down, all this paper off and the walls white.
There's about 16 layers on here.
Ah, my mother and dad will help us, I'm sure they will.
My dad will give us hand as well. Be glad of something to do.
What are you laughing at?
Just thinking of his face when my mother said we could borrow his redundancy money.
Oh, don't.
So in this part of the film, they're showing this couple and they're trying to build up the fact that they're trying to start a new life. They're about to have a child. It's all about new beginnings being more starkly contrasted and thus exemplifying the stark, desolate reality of the post-apocalyptic hellscape that awaits them.
Oh dear. I like the gardens. I think it's lovely for children to have somewhere to play.
Well, if they'll let me build an aviary down there.
Those days.
Oh, you and your birds.
Makes you feel funny though, doesn't it?
What do you mean?
Out of owning home, being married, having children. You have to put years on you, don't it?
Don't be silly. Don't be lovely. I just know it will.
Yeah, love.
American and Israeli search and rescue vessels in the area today came across debris and oil slicks that could only have come from the missing submarine. It's still being said in Washington that the Los Angeles was on a routine reconnaissance mission off the coast of Iran when she sank last Tuesday with the loss of all hands. After paying tribute to her 127 officers and men, the president went on to say that he held the Soviet Union solely responsible for their deaths and for the vessel's disappearance.
The unprovoked.
So things have escalated pretty fast in the Middle East. A U.S. ship has went down with all of the crew on board. This is certainly something that, if it were to happen today, would be casus belli to go to war in some capacity, and it very likely would spiral out of control, no matter what theater of conflict it was in.
Attack on our submarine and the move into Iran are the actions of a reckless and warlike power. I have to warn the Soviets in the clearest possible terms that they risk taking us to the brink of an armed confrontation with incalculable consequences for all mankind.
Britain has emergency plans for war. If central government should ever fail, power can be transferred instead to a system of local officials dispersed across the country. In an urban district like Sheffield, there is already a designated wartime controller. He's the city's peacetime chief executive. If it should suddenly become necessary, he can be given full powers of internal government. When or if this happens depends on the crisis itself.
So we learned that there's these decentralized nodes of control, and in many places throughout Europe, they're actually bringing back this type of civil defense infrastructure and protocol. Because in many places they've done away with these Cold War era procedures, the level of preparedness would be much lower today than it was during that period of time, and during that period of time it wasn't that good.
The United States government has been forced, reluctantly, to take action to safeguard what it believes are legitimate Western interests in the Middle East. This administration has therefore resolved to send units of its Rapid Deployment Force, the U.S. Central Command, into Western Iran. We are confident that the Soviet Union will take note of our resolve and will desist from its present perilous course of action.
We are confident that the Soviet Union will desist from its current course of action. So this is the type of language that they're going to use in the run-up. It's always going to be trying to communicate that things are under control, don't worry, peace is at hand, and there's nothing to worry about. And you're going to see this trend right up to the moment that the bombs drop. Right now, this scene is depicting the government who is sending out a letter to all of these decentralized municipalities and provinces to start getting prepared, but don't tip off the population that you're doing this, because we don't want to create undue alarm or concern amongst the population, which could interfere with our war planning. So they know that shit is going to hit the fan long before the population does. And this is exactly how it's going to play out if it happened today.
On to football, there's an important score coming in from the Hawthorns, where West Brom have taken the lead over First Division leaders Manchester United. Is West Brom 1, Manchester United 0. Mackenzie getting that all-important goal. 1, Aston Villa 1. No change at Filbert Street.
Thank you very much, sir.
It's the time.
This guy gets the memo that it's time to start prepping for the shit to hit the fan.
But very good exercise. And the only piece of equipment you want is a chair with legs. Right. I'll just let you listen to the lovely silhouette piece when you get that chair home.
Mary, I want you to contact the following people and have them in my office in 10 minutes' time. I don't care what they're doing, they're to drop in and get here right away. Is that clear? Right. You got a pencil? Okay. Alan Bolton, George Cox, Roger Fisher.
So at this point in the film, the regional emergency manager is contacting all of the people of interest who are going to start coordinating their efforts to prepare for war. So you can see on this list, there's emergency committee, controller, deputy, works officer, food officer, manpower
Susan
officer.
Russell.
So that's going to be somebody who is tasked with conscripting people to do forced labor. Environmental health officer. That's going to be somebody who is looking at, is the soil going to be good enough to grow food after it hits the fan?
Yes.
Homelessness. How are you going to deal with accommodating the many refugees? Information. So how are you going to control media, post-collapse, scientific advisors? How are you going to deal with radiation? Things of that nature. Most of those things are going to have their analog today. So we can see here, people are starting to get the sense that something is going on, and we're getting the first indicators that there is a bit of panic in the air. So people are starting to line up at the grocery stores just a little bit more.
It's busy for a Wednesday, isn't it? I think it was Christmas.
The lady says, it's busy for a Wednesday, isn't it? You'd think it was Christmas. Quite frankly, I don't even know if at this point in time, the population nowadays would be this panicked, because we simply aren't as perspective and vigilant as they were in the 80s throughout the thick of the Cold War. Right now, people are largely complacent. So I think that we're not even going to get this sort of preamble panic. We're just going to go right to people stockpiling and looting the stores.
The best of the weather again tomorrow. It looks as if Northern Ireland...
And what about the food situation? What have we got?
As well. In between these areas...
And what about fire?
Cloudier weather. This cloud could give some eastern areas...
What else is there?
A cloudier time on Sunday.
Corned beef?
The detailed picture now...
Hope it's not from Argentina.
South and East Wales...
Okay, what about supplies to the first aid post?
In England, a fine evening and a
Is that
dry
all?
night with perhaps...
Well, that's not going to get us very far, is it?
So right now, this regional manager is talking about how there's not going to be enough supplies and the government is ill-prepared. Shocker.
What?
No lower than about 5 centigrade.
Well, I'm sure I don't know, if I'm honest.
Tomorrow, once again, dry...
We've heard nothing about emergency powers as yet.
Even a shade higher than today.
Anyway, don't make a song and dance about it. Just get on with it. And don't tell anybody you don't have to, eh? Okay.
Don't make a song and dance about it. Just get on with it. And don't tell anybody you don't have to. The last thing we want to do is start a panic. People need to understand that if a major emergency was around the corner, you are the last person they want to know. Because if you know, everybody knows, and that's going to interfere with continuity of government.
Units of the United States 10th Airborne Division, which parachuted into western Iran yesterday, have taken up defensive positions near Isfahan, designed, according to the spokesman, to block any possible move towards the oil.
So interestingly, the airborne American troops actually land in a place called Isfahan in Iran, which today is largely associated with being a hub for Iran's nuclear program. So some very important foreshadowing there.
Fields in the Persian Gulf. Squadrons of American B-52 bombers have been arriving at U.S. bases in Turkey since late on Tuesday.
Address 13, some interesting numerology there. Everybody knows that 13, especially in the 80s, meant bad luck.
Together with 3 AWACS early warning aircraft, it's believed that they'll be used in a supporting role to the Middle East Task Force.
All right, John.
The 84th Airborne Division has also been placed on the state of combat readiness.
Here they're showing it's the spring, so they're showing people plant food. Now, this is important because this is happening in a time of year where there's not a lot of food storage in supply, because in the 80s there wasn't really as much globalization. It was less of a just-in-time delivery system, and it was more based on seasonal conditions in terms of like grain stockpiles and food stockpiles. So this is showing that the war is going to happen at a very untimely moment when food reserves are at their lowest point possible.
Bigly, I suppose.
Why don't you pop down to WH Smith's and buy yourself an aircraft spotter's book? You can start a new orbit, make a change from gardening.
You can laugh, but there's something going on, I'm telling you.
There's something going on tonight when I've had a few pints.
Don't be going mad. You ain't only got yourself to think about now, you know.
Why not? Might as well enjoy myself while I'm single. Not a lot long to go now, you know.
You could be right there.
What's up with you? Getting into training for when you're married? Too late to explain
Worldwide anxiety about the superpower confrontation in the Middle East has increased still further this evening. In a statement issued a short time ago by the Pentagon in Washington, the United States has accused the Soviet Union of moving nuclear warheads into their new base at Mashhad in northern Iran. According to the American spokesman, the warhead...
Hey, I'm watching that.
So you can see here, they're all in the pub now, and they were watching a news broadcast that was telling them that the Russians have moved nuclear weapons into Iran, and they were watching that very attentively. And the bartender changes the channel, and they immediately say, hey, turn the channel back, because people are becoming more concerned and more anxious about the prospect of this thing spiraling out of control.
Aboard two giant Antonov transport planes late yesterday afternoon and were immediately moved undercover into temporary hangars.
See that? Watching that thing about Far East and it goes and turns its over.
Far East? Wow, what's going on there?
Iran. The Americans have just said Russian.
Iran? That's not the Far East, you pellet. That's the Middle East. China, Hong Kong, that's the Far East.
So what? It's far enough, isn't it?
So I've looked at Near East myself. Scarborough and Skegness.
Skeggy? I'd rather watch me toenails grow than go there.
On the reports at this stage.
Never mind that rubbish. What about these two birds to east of this table?
In the next hour or so. NATO's position on the United States.
These guys are just trying to get laid before it hits the fan. This is exactly what will happen.
Action in sending its task force.
That's right, you know, it's getting serious.
Well, there's not we can do about it, is there? Might as well enjoy ourselves whilst we can.
I know, but don't it scare you what it might lead to?
It bloody scares me. There's no we can do about it, is there?
This is an interesting exchange. You have one guy saying, it seems like things are escalating. Maybe we should be a little bit concerned. And the other guy says, well, it's not like we can do anything about it, can we? So this sort of fatalistic, laissez-faire attitude is going to doom these people who are succumbing to this sort of fatalistic complacency to a hellish existence in a very inhospitable, desolate world.
Tell you one thing, if the bomb does drop, I'm going to be pissed out of my mind and straight underneath it when it happens.
From which neither side can back down.
So instead of preparing, people are just accepting their fate. This is not the same as normalcy bias and assuming that nothing is going to happen. There's two types of people who have these defense mechanisms when it comes to preparedness. One are the people who succumb to normalcy bias, where they think that because nothing bad has happened in the past, nothing bad can happen in the future. And there's the other fatalistic brand of person who believes that, well, if something happens, I don't want to survive anyways. I just want to be blind drunk and hopefully go out with a nuclear blast. The fact is, you're likely not going to be so lucky if you call that luck. You're going to have to survive, and you're going to be kicking yourself for not making more preparations beforehand.
Arriving here in Brussels a short time ago, NATO's Secretary-General said he regretted the Soviet action.
Miserable bugger, it's all his family responsibilities. You're acting like a married man already.
Not been long now, you know.
Well, you might as well make the best of it once you can, haven't you?
The other interesting contrast here is that this guy now has a child, so he has responsibilities. This is something that a lot of people don't have nowadays. So you see juxtaposed here a sort of patriarchal responsibility with a more infantile, carefree perspective, which is very characteristic of the majority of people nowadays who don't have children and have much less children than they were having in the 80s.
Middle East. Whether the
chatting these two birds up there.
Strengthens the divisions within NATO
Let's go hit up these two birds over there. Have a good shy guy.
The full Council of Ministers meets in
Might be the last chance you'll get. Anyway, if we are going to cop it, might as well go out with a bang, that's what I say.
Got me many better ways of going, I don't suppose. Blown up on the job.
Returning you to London.
And we've just heard that the Prime Minister has issued a message of support for the United States government. The statement, just released from Downing Street, condemns what it calls reckless Soviet actions, which can only worsen an already grave situation.
To the Director Technical Services. Please let me know what fuel stocks are currently held in each depot. Please ensure that tanks are kept topped up and that no fuel is used except for essential works only.
So they're already starting to try to ration fuel and supplies behind the scenes. And this is something that you're likely going to see, but you're not going to hear about it. You're just going to notice that there's a supply shortage that is unexplained. You may start seeing gas stations run low on fuel, or food running a little bit low because the military is expropriating things and not informing the public as to what they're doing. This is a bit of a tip-off. So in the same way that prior to a tsunami, you're going to get signs. The birds are going to fly. The water is going to roll out into the ocean before it comes back in a massive wave. These are the things that you're going to see before they make a public emergency announcement. Because they know right when they make that announcement, people are going to lose their frickin' minds.
Response from the Soviet government as yet to the United States ultimatum delivered to Moscow last night. The American note calls for joint withdrawal of all US and Soviet forces from Iran by noon on Sunday. However, NATO observers in West Germany have reported increasing buildups of Warsaw Pact troops and vehicles at points along the central frontier this morning. The Ministry of Defense has announced it's sending more troops to Europe to reinforce the British commitment to NATO. The first contingents left RAF Brize Norton this morning.
So here's something that you're going to see, and that's going to be the protests in the streets against nuclear weapons. Now, this was pretty common in the 80s. It certainly isn't common nowadays because, again, we feel as though we're past this as a society, but unfortunately we're not. Back then, of course, there were a lot more nuclear weapons. There were a lot less nuclear treaties, and this was at the peak of the Cold War. But what a government wants to prevent is this kind of civil unrest, because this, of course, will drastically complicate their ability to mobilize for war.
The day has been marked by a number of demonstrations up and down the country, reflecting support for and against the government's decision to reinforce Europe. Although most of these passed off without incident, police made a number of arrests for disorderly conduct at rallies in the North and Midlands.
The government has taken control of British Airways and all cross-channel ferries. They say it's a temporary step to help move troops to Europe.
So here we have the government starting to commandeer and take control of various corridors and restricting access to certain places because, of course, logistics is going to be a big deal. The military is going to need those roadways in order to get their resources to where they need them. So this is something you can expect in the run-up. You're not going to be able to travel in certain places.
Thousands are stranded at Heathrow and Gatwick. And the Royal Navy is to guard the North Sea oil rigs. The MOD says it's a prudent precautionary measure.
Another thing you're going to see, as they just indicated, they're sending the military to protect various oil rigs. They're going to be going to those places because they know that after a nuclear war, those resources are going to be incredibly vital. So the military needs to get there and secure those locations as soon as possible.
This time, they are playing with, at best, the destruction of life as we know it, and at worst, total annihilation. You cannot win a nuclear war!
Now, this is actually a subject of debate. This movie runs on the logic and the theory at the time, which was prevailing, of nuclear winter. Now, it's a contested theory as to whether or not nuclear winter is actually going to happen, and the extent of the fallout, both literally and figuratively, and the consequences of a full-blown nuclear exchange. So the thinking in this movie is that full-blown nuclear exchange will lead to a cooling in the atmosphere, which will create like a minus 10 degree drop in temperature, which of course is going to make life on Earth inhospitable and unlivable for the foreseeable future. That, however, is not necessarily the only theory of what will happen after a nuclear war. In fact, there are many potential ways it could go down, where one side could get the jump on the other and they could minimize the retaliatory strike capabilities of the other side, drastically limiting the amount of nuclear weapons that were actually used. It's important that people understand that this is one way it could play out, but it's certainly not the only way.
Now, just suppose the Russians win this war. What exactly would they be winning? What would they have conquered? Well, I'll tell you. All major centres of population and industry will have been destroyed.
Industry? What industry? We ain't got no industry in Sheffield!
Yes, and if the money hadn't been spent on nuclear weapons, you would have built up industry.
Get back to bloody Russia!
We would have put money into welfare. We would have found alternative sources of energy. Industry will have been destroyed. Oil refineries will have been destroyed. All our water would have been polluted. The soil would have been irradiated.
So here within this protest, within this crowd, you actually have two camps. You have one camp who is associating this woman who is anti-war as being a part of the other side. So this is something which we very likely would see today. You'll have people who are speaking out against the war who will actually be accused of working for the other side. So that's going to create a civil divide and potential for civil unrest in every country.
Stop would be dead, diseased, or dying. The Russians would have conquered a corpse of a country.
Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
In this scene, it reads, 12 noon, U.S. ultimatum expires. Where have we been hearing about ultimatums lately? I'm seeing some parallels here. We have a B-52 strike with conventional weapons on the Mashhad base. Now, this is before the invention of the B-2 stealth bomber. So if you just supplant B-52 with B-2 and Mashhad base with, I don't know, Fordow nuclear facility and U.S. ultimatums that expire, tell me that that is not an uncanny premonition. This is what a lot of people forget about. There were a lot of unconventional uses for nuclear weapons at that point in time. The Russians actually used a nuclear-tipped air defense missile. Back in the day, they had different strategies of how they would counteract nuclear weapons, and one of those things was to actually use nuclear weapons on their missile defense to create like a bigger blast radius to ensure that the target was eliminated. Now, will they still seek to employ these types of methods? It's very possible. This is where the shit starts hitting the fan. The US responds with a battlefield nuclear weapon on a Soviet base. What they mean by that is a low-yield tactical nuclear weapon. So not a city killer yet, but indeed the Rubicon has been crossed. Interesting to note here, exchange stops. There's some people who believe that after the first nuclear weapon is used, it's DEFCON 1 and they're going to launch everything. But as we've seen over the last 5 years, these things tend to progress a lot slower than expected. And there's many rungs up the escalation ladder where you could have these brief periods of reprieve. Thus, people might suspect that, okay, maybe there's a chance to work this out. People will become complacent at every rung of the escalation ladder and fail to prepare for what we're inevitably moving towards. This is a fucking dark movie, man.
Since the expiry of the American ultimatum to the Soviet Union at noon yesterday, there have been intense diplomatic efforts to mediate between the two countries.
Listen to the language. Since the expiration of the ultimatum, mediate between two countries. I mean, the parallels between what we're seeing today are really uncanny. Even though now it's actually worse because there's a hot war in Iran and Ukraine and out in the east that's developing.
There is still no information from Iran itself. No news teams have been allowed in or out of the country since phone and telex links were cut on Friday evening.
Okay, that's very important to note, okay? So they're saying that there's no media allowed into the actual theater of conflict, and all telephone and communication lines have been cut. Now, that is very similar to what we're seeing nowadays. A lot of people think that that can't happen nowadays because we have the internet and we have other means of communication. I would disagree. Even in the modern day, in the Ukraine war, when we can stream live in 4K, nobody really has any definitive understanding of what is going on. So this is what you can expect beforehand, the fog of war.
Questioned in the House this morning, the Foreign Secretary said he had no definite news to report and that it would be unhelpful to speculate in the absence of any hard information from the area.
It would be unhelpful to speculate. That is one of those phrases that tips you off that things are getting worse. Hear that? Movies nowadays just don't do this. They're bringing in all of the heavy construction equipment. Why? Because they know that after the bombs drop, they're going to need to do rescue. They're going to need to excavate. They're going to need to fortify certain facilities.
There's been a run on tinned food, sugar, and other storable items, which is causing shortages in some areas. Spokesman for the main supermarket chain said that panic buying is unnecessary. Fuel shortages are hindering
So notice what she's saying on the radio. Panic buying is unnecessary, and they're really trying to keep the population calm, but you can see that the shelves are starting to get more and more bare. And people are still acting civil. They aren't fist fighting yet for food, but you could feel the tension building.
Supply in some areas, but overall there is no shortage of stocks.
They try to reassure people. They say that while it might be true that there's shortages in certain areas, but generally speaking, there's no shortage of stocks. Everybody remain calm. Remember that old mantra, keep calm and move on? That is actually from the UK. I believe that was a saying, if I'm not mistaken, that was coined during World War II in order to just avoid panic, because they understand that panic is the way that societies collapse before the bombs drop.
They urge the public to calm down.
40p? That's scandalous. They were only 26p last week.
Can always shop somewhere else, you know, if you're not satisfied. Honest.
That's going to happen. You're going to see price gouging, and there, in some ways, can be controls. This is where the government might step in to try to mitigate that, but they're going to have their own share of problems. And this is actually going to create the conditions that will lead people to just loot and steal when they can no longer afford the stuff.
There's a national emergency going on, and all you can think about is lining your pockets.
Look, nobody's forcing you to buy them. Put them back on shelves if you don't want them.
Yes, I will. I'd sooner starve first. Excuse me, love.
They've started fighting, Mum.
Who has?
The Americans and the Russians. It's just been on the news. My dad says you've got to come home now. Come on.
Hey, you haven't paid for them things.
So, this is when the looting starts.
In response to today's news of the outbreak of hostilities between vessels of the United States and Soviet navies, a special session of Parliament has this evening passed an Emergency Powers Act. There'll be a special announcement at the end of this bulletin, and details will be given then of how this affects you. The Prime Minister is expected to address the nation on the international crisis later this evening. A statement issued earlier from Downing Street said the government is optimistic that a peaceful, negotiated settlement to the conflict is at hand. In the meantime, the public is urged to remain calm and to continue normally.
Optimistic that a peaceful, negotiated settlement to the conflict is at hand. Always reassure people that everything is okay. Keep calm and press on. This is a very critical moment where a lot of people are going to be lulled back into a sense of complacency. Honestly, if you haven't prepared by this point in time, you're pretty much screwed, but you still would have a few more hours. And this is precisely why they didn't want to create a panic, because now you're going to have gridlock. Shot of the lights on to show that the electrical grid is still functioning. People are starting to go crazy. People are starting to fight. People are shouting in the streets.
It's noisy.
Must be pubs turning out.
These people are classic normalcy bias. They know what's going on, but they're telling themselves that, oh, the noises in the streets are just the pubs that are closing, and it's a bunch of drunk people in the streets, trying to convince themselves that the reality that they knew for the longest time was the one that will endure into the future, because it's psychologically unsettling to accept the fact that your life is about to fundamentally change forever. I would suspect that normalcy bias is much worse in Western society, where we've been conditioned to be driven by reward in this society, and thus we have an optimism bias, which actually amplifies most people's normalcy bias, in that not only do we no longer have the skills to survive, we're lucky if we even perceive the threat. Every second of this film is something.
Nevertheless, people are alarmed about what they see as a lack of advice or information from the government.
But the policy of the government is quite clear on the matter. We're urging people to keep calm.
Doing a moonlight flick then?
Go about their business.
No, we're going over to our jacks in Lincoln so our things get sorted out.
We all know
I reckon we're safer over there.
So these people are bugging out. They're making the smart decision to get out of the densely populated urban areas, and you're going to see that the neighbors are going to try to either talk them out of it or talk themselves into staying, thinking that the situation is futile.
You stop messing about there and come inside the house and do something to help.
Yeah. I'll be safe anywhere as far as I can see.
Well, I don't know. We've a better chance of surviving in country, really, haven't we? I mean, where our Jack lives is on here, road houses and a pub. I don't think they're going to bomb that, are they?
Well, I think that's about it, Ron. Carol!
See, we have the contrast of people who are resigned to one possible fate and another people who still have blood flowing through their veins and realize that, hey, there's a chance that we're going to survive this, or they know that they're probably going to survive, and why suffer when you can suffer less?
Have you turned that gas off?
I hope so. We don't want the whole street blowing up while you're away.
Come on, Carol.
Pop! I'm coming!
The detail, you know, how he just said there, did you shut the gas off? So this is something that maybe people had to do back in the day, you know, before you went on vacation. You shut the gas off, you shut the water heater off, you know, you did these things, and this would actually have mitigated the potential negative outcomes in a situation like this, where you got natural gas plumbed into the entire street. You know, if there's an explosion, that whole thing is going to go. And one of the biggest challenges of nuclear war, and military analysts understand this very well, is going to be the fires that rage, whether in the countryside, in the forest. The fires after a full-blown nuclear exchange are going to be one of the biggest hazards out there for reasons that he just identified.
Can't find our spot. Well, he was here a minute ago, wasn't he? Have you looked inside the house?
Looked upstairs, along street, next door neighbour's garden, all over.
Ridiculous, all this. Spot!
Spot!
Even this, the family has to decide, do we wait for the pet or do we leave the pet? These are going to be dilemmas that people are faced with.
He was here a minute ago.
Come on.
He'll be here in a minute. I know he will be. Spot!
Come on, look.
Well, where is it?
Come on, look. We're going with our teams here. Come on.
Honestly.
Mom! Spot!
You're a right fool. Nothing'll happen.
Come on, we're not standing about here all day waiting for a bloody dog. Get in.
Mr. Crow, we can't leave him.
Carol, get in. Get in.
Thank you, Minister. And we've just had a news flash.
Come on, get in, you
that
bloody
the
thing.
Russians have cut the road links into and out of West Berlin.
See you then,
Rail
Bill.
and air communications with the city have apparently also been severed.
So on the radio, they just said that different roadways into Berlin have been cut off and air links have been cut off. You have a certain window that you can bug out. Eventually, they're probably going to seal up the city because they know that that's where the majority of traffic is going to be coming from. And it's going to interfere with the military's ability to navigate.
Details are still coming in, but it seems an American Army convoy bound for West Berlin has been turned back at Helmstedt on the East German border. Unconfirmed reports say the Russians have offered a safe passage out of the city to the US, British and French garrisons. It's not clear if this move is connected with yesterday's riots in East Germany. We'll bring you more details on the story as soon as we have them.
Something here. Yes, I understand. Do I have to go right away? No? When? Yes, I see.
Now, that bureaucrat, he looked at a picture of his wife because in those days, you weren't allowed to even tell your family what was going on. And so if you're one of these government officials, you're going to be faced with a situation where you might have information that you're not allowed to disclose even to your family members, knowing full well that they're going to be in harm's way. They were able to communicate that in 2 seconds of footage. That's why this film is a masterpiece.
Local authorities have been given the power to suspend certain peacetime functions and to requisition premises and materials for civil defense purposes.
Okay, so what they just said there is that now they're expropriating people's stuff. And basically, this is when the government comes in and says, a war is coming. If you have a shop doing woodwork or whatever the case might be, the government has the capability to come in and say, we need this for war, and you no longer own it. That's going to happen.
Premises and materials for civil defense purposes. A government spokesman said that this was a precautionary move only. It was not a cause for alarm.
A precautionary move only, not a cause for alarm. Exactly what they're going to say. American air and naval blockade of Cuba. Right now we have warships in and around the Venezuela region, which in some ways is the Cuba of today because they have close ties with the Russians and the Chinese. The simple fact that there is a large naval presence in South America at this point in time from the U.S. Navy is mildly concerning, and once again is another uncanny parallel with the predictions of this film. Anti-Soviet demonstrations in U.S. cities, damage to Russian consulates. This is when McCarthyism was all the rage. You're going to have two elements, and this is why any world war has a civil war component. There's going to be domestic disputes with one camp, may be overly xenophobic of the adversary, and another camp who is trying to be, promote peace. And those people who promote peace are going to be lumped in with the adversary. And that's going to create civil unrest. So here they're clearing hospitals of anybody who doesn't necessarily need to be there. So they need to free up all of those hospital beds for mass casualty incidents. Now, recently, John Campbell, a YouTuber, was talking about a tender that was put out for mass casualty freezing equipment in order to deal with corpses, and how they're getting ready to prepare for these mass casualty incidents. In France, they're also doing something similar. They want a protocol in order to triage people out of the hospital so that can free up more space for the critical cases. The problem is, if we're talking about a counter-value strike, which involves taking out actual cities, then most of those hospitals are going to be in cities. And no matter how many people they kick out of the hospital, they're never going to have enough capacity that would even approach what would be needed in a situation that is about to happen. Wool blankets. White Swan.
Take your time. The AA and RAC have reported heavy congestion on roads up and down the country.
Okay, you see that? You see that white swan? It's a symbol of peace, prosperity, innocence, right? At least in Western culture. The black swan, conversely, has negative connotations as a very unexpected event. Of course, this swan is going to be blackened by the radioactive fallout and soot that ensues shortly thereafter. So this is what I mean by this movie. Every frame of the film has meaning.
On roads up and down the country, particularly those leading to Wales and the West Country. The police are urging motorists not to travel unless absolutely necessary.
So here you have all these people bugging out, and on the radio it's saying don't travel unless completely necessary. Again, their priority is continuity of government. They want you to shelter in place even if you're in the blast zone, which is insane.
It is essential to use only minor roads and leave motorways and intercity trunk routes clear for official traffic. A full list of designated essential service routes is posted outside your local authority headquarters. It includes the M1, M18, A63, and A629.
I've done a video where I talk about how quickly things will run out. There is only enough gas in a city to supply a population on a just-in-time basis. If everybody were to fill their tanks at once and start traveling in a way which was outside the norm, these gas stations would go empty almost within hours. Okay, so emergency powers have been enacted. Known and potential subversives arrested. So who are these known and potential subversives? Are they people who are trying to warn people that it's going to hit the fan and they need to get out of Dodge? Are these just dissident voices who are anti-war? Or are these the people who are trying to communicate to people the gravity of the situation and encouraging them to prep? Because a subversive in this case could be anybody who is disruptive to the continuity of government process. As we approach that proverbial day X, people like myself might be deemed as subversive because I'm interfering with the government's ability to muster a response, because of course they are ill prepared to do so, and that is their fault, not yours. So they arrested the protesting leader. Okay, now this scene right here, you have a corridor leaving a city which is jam-packed, gridlocked, and the one on the opposite side, which is barely empty. Eventually, if you're smart, you're going to get wise, you're going to jump over the meridian, and you're going to go into oncoming traffic. That's going to happen, and it's going to be a problem. That's why
We're trying to get across to relatives in Lincolnshire.
Not this way, you're not. Essential services only this road. You'll have to find another route, I'm afraid.
Essential services only. Where did they ingrain that into our psyche before? Oh yes, the COVID lockdowns. That's right. If you're not essential, you ain't going anywhere. That's why you need to have a plan before it hits the fan. Stay off the main drags, use the back roads. Otherwise, like this guy with this goofy face right here, you're going to be screwed.
But it's ridiculous, you can't just stop people like that.
Excuse me, where are you going? No, I'm sorry, love, you can't go there.
You just can't stop people like
I'll tell you what, try junction 35, 36 the M1. They've opened up the hard shoulder of single line traffic only. You can imagine what it'd be like, chock a block. If I were you, I'd go home and sit tight. That's what they're advising people to do.
The cop says, if I were you, I would just go home and sit tight. That's what they are advising people to do. Yes, officer friendly, just following orders like the useful idiot he is. Do not obey that order. Obey it at your own risk.
There's growing evidence overnight from scientists and observers in many countries that there have been 2 nuclear explosions in the Middle East. There's no official confirmation.
I've noticed that the reporter is actually dressing progressively more casual as she gives these broadcasts. I think that's what's happening here.
Of what has happened, and the Foreign Office in London.
I've put half a dozen in. Can fetch some more if you like.
No, that'll be plenty.
Major explosions in northern Iran on Sunday.
Well, tell him to improvise then.
The Swedish government sighted a
Right.
station at Hagford said yesterday that its instruments.
Clive, you don't think anything's really going to happen, do you?
No, it's just a precaution, that's all.
So the regional emergency response manager says, no, just a precaution. Keep everybody calm. Why? It's the noble lie. You're trying to do the utilitarian thing if you're the government and save the most amount of people. And in your mind, because you didn't prepare, the best way to do that is to keep as many people of calm so that we can muster a significant response thereafter.
Recorded just before 1:30.
You had a shave this morning. Oh, you should never have said you'd do it. You don't have to. You won't get the sack if you refuse.
Look, Marjorie, it's difficult for me as well, you know. I don't want to go and leave you and the children.
Well, then why are you going?
Well, somebody's got to pick up the pieces. Why didn't you say so?
So I made a mistake earlier when I talked about how he was not allowed to alert his family members of the situation. That actually wasn't the case because this is actually his wife. But that will be the case in which if you're like a high-ranking official or if you're in the military, you're not allowed to disclose. You're under NDA. You're not allowed to talk about what's going on, even if the risk is escalating. So I think it's important that dynamic is captured and that point is driven home for people. Some people are going to be put in a situation where they're going to have to lie to their own family members about the severity. And I suppose that is still the situation here.
And before, if you were worried about it. You never said anything when I went away on those courses. Sutton here.
Unconfirmed reports from Islamabad
Yes, in half an hour's time.
London this morning suggest
I should be getting off now if I were you. The roads should be getting busy.
may have fallen on parts.
Well, use your common sense now.
According to the report,
Well, how should I know?
high levels of radiation were
Marjorie,
monitored by
leave that.
army units in the region around
I'll ring you
Karan,
later.
near the country's border with.
Throughout this exchange, there's two things happening. Like they're trying to cram so much information in here. So he's having this conversation with his wife and on the phone with preparing provisions. But in the background, they're talking about how radioactive fallout is already starting to have an effect and pull more countries into the war. Because, of course, radioactive fallout could be perceived to be a trigger by impacted countries to enter into the war, acting against whatever side they felt was responsible. Now, I want to go back because it's like a dichotomous listening task, trying to figure out everything going on here. So I want to listen to what he is saying now.
Children?
Well, then why are you going?
Well, somebody's got to pick up the pieces. Why didn't you say something before if you were worried about it? I never said anything when I went away on those courses. Sutton here.
Unconfirmed reports from Islamabad
Yes, in half an hour's time.
London this morning suggest
I should be getting off now if I were you. The roads should be getting busy.
may have fallen on parts.
Well, use your common sense, man.
According to the report,
Well, how should I know?
high levels of radiation were
Marjorie,
monitored by
leave that.
army units in the region around
I'll ring you
Karam,
later.
near the country's border with Iran. The evacuation of the area is also reported.
So he puts her picture in his briefcase. She sees that, and now she knows the truth of what's really happening.
Yes.
It is imperative, while there is still time left, that the TUC call a general strike in protest against this disaster which faces us all.
That's what'll destroy this country!
There is still time to avert disaster.
This is where things really start to domestically reach a breaking point, where you're going to have people who are organizing to cease participation in society in whatever respect as a protest, and that is going to be met with resistance to people on the other side who believe that they are actually subversives. And then you get the riot police coming in, who at this point in time, I don't even know if the government has the resources to muster them. But the interesting thing about this here is that we are really on the precipice. We are really on the brink of shit hitting the fan, and people are still following orders. And I believe this movie is very accurate. This is at a time when people are aware of all the nuclear war risks. I mean, this is in the peak of the Cold War, where people still kind of have a faint memory of World War II. People aren't like complacent dummies. They know the risks, and still right up until the final moment, people report for duty.
Resolutely, and show both the Russians and the Americans that we will have no trouble with their warmongering. All about the Falklands. Listen, mate, there's nobody more patriotic than I am. I've been trying to get us out of the common market for bloody years.
This is a peaceful demonstration. We are exercising our right of free speech. The police have no right to stop this demonstration. You have no right to orders. £1.50 a go. Come on, all of you. £1.50 to save your life.
The moral of the story here is don't waste your time trying to protest what's coming. It's out of your control. I would spend every waking moment preparing to get out of Dodge and put yourself in an advantageous position for when the dust settles. So here what they're doing is they're moving all of the artwork that is of value into the bunkers.
Boy, Alan, what's it like in there?
Oh, it's a bit primitive. Take a look.
Aye, well, we'll get it organised.
Okay, so here the municipal authorities are moving into a bunker. So even during the Cold War, these weren't like really hardened bunkers. A lot of these were just glorified basements that were underground. These aren't going to be in places where it's expected that there's a direct strike, because they would be destroyed, but they would be in places where maybe there was a blast wave, or they'd be well outside the blast zone, but they would still succumb to the effects of a nuclear explosion. but they would be resistant to it enough that they would survive.
Where the hell is everybody? There's only half of them here.
You know Steve, the information officer.
Where the hell is everybody?
Jeff just rang in, says his car's broken down.
Well, that's no good, is it? How many are missing?
About 10.
I'll get on the phone, tell them I want them here immediately.
Right.
Which is my desk?
It's straight through. Mind your head.
Don't see any sign of the emergency committee, do you?
I know those bloody councillors are on.
Right, well, they're not getting paid for this, are they?
Well, this is it. It's the best I can do. Dr. Talbot, Regional Health Authority.
How do you do? How are things going?
We're doing our best. Good.
In the last few days, emergency headquarters like this have been hastily improvised up and down the country.
I just can't get over how much detail is in this film. He just finished talking to the regional health inspector, and then they show this sanitation symbol, which of course is potentially going to be a health issue because this is how waterborne disease happens, okay?
The time has now come to make everything ready for you and your family in case an air attack happens. This does not mean that war is bound to come, but there is a risk of this, and we must all be prepared for it. When you hear the attack warning, you and your family must take cover at once. Do not stay out of doors. If you are caught in the open, lie down.
So it's only now in the final minutes in the run-up to shit hitting the fan that the government is telling people what to do, and the reality is sinking in. And here you have Ruth, who is now pregnant. She is, of course, anguishing about the fact that she's now going to have to bear a child in this new world. But in addition to that, she's kind of stricken with normalcy bias at the same time, and she's trying to pretend as if nothing is happening, and she's going about business as usual.
If you leave your home, your local authority may take it over for homeless families. And
now, interesting what they just said there. If you leave your home, the local authorities may take it over for homeless placement. So again, just another reminder that the government owns everything you own. Try to get as far from the government as you can.
if you move, the authorities in the new place will not help you with food, accommodation, or other essentials.
Now that is important. They just said, and this goes into like the 15-minute city thing and all of that. This is 1984, remember. They said that if you move from your original location, you will not be qualified to get help from the government. So this is how they're trying to encourage people to stay home and shelter in place. So that is very interesting, because I could definitely see something like that happening when it hits the fan. You're going to have to show your papers and show where you originated and why aren't you in that place. This is maybe just a threat that the government is using to try to make everybody stay home.
You are better off in your own home. Stay there.
You're better off in your own home, stay there. Well, that depends on where your home is. I would say that that is largely true. But if your home is in the epicenter of a primary target zone, you're definitely not better off. Unless better off is a quick death as opposed to the slow burning out and suffering in the post-apocalyptic hellscape. So in this scene, they're showing you how they're going to distribute and decentralize all of the emergency infrastructure and services. So it can't be destroyed. You want to distribute these assets around because they're likely not going to be able to maneuver around if all the roadways are clogged. So you're going to want them distributed to some of the major locations. There's not going to be nearly enough fire trucks, much less the water pressure to suppress fires, but they got to do it, I guess. quiet in the streets now, so people are...
If anyone dies while you are kept in your fallout room, move the body to another room in the house.
Now this is interesting, because the milkman is still delivering milk, and I'm trying to understand the symbology of this. The milkman, I think at one point, might have been something that was government run. I can't quite say for certain.
If, however, you have had a body in the house for more than 5 days, and if it is safe to go outside, then you should bury the body for the time being in a trench or cover it with earth and mark the spot of the burial.
So the depiction here is quite stark and dismal. They're telling you how to deal with corpses when it hits the fan. So we've went from keep calm and press on to here's how you're going to bury a body in your backyard and mark it so that the authorities know. You can see that there's still people going about their business, reading newspapers, delivering milk. It's a very interesting contrast that there's still some semblance of order here somehow, but the cities are largely vacant. There's some people just going about their day. Morning sickness.
Here are some ideas for making your inner refuge. 1. Make a lean-to with sloping doors or strong boards rested against an inner wall.
You all right, love?
So in the newspaper, they are giving people kind of some survival strategies on how to mitigate fallout. The more mass between you and the outside world, the radioactive fallout that falls on the top of the building or outside, you basically want to put as much mass between you and that as possible. So that means stacking up mattresses, books, containers of stuff, anything you can find, position it in the middle of your home. That should attenuate the gamma radiation to enough of an extent that it won't kill you in the first 48 hours. I find an interesting contrast here with this guy who is very well dressed and he's drinking his tea. That is going to be very starkly contrasted with the forsaken hellscape that awaits.
Length of wood along the floor. Build further protection of bags or boxes of old or books.
Can't go back to bed.
On the slope of your
Don't worry about it, love. It'll only last for a week or two.
Partly close the two open ends with boxes of earth or sand or heavy furniture. 2.
I'll have to ring work for you and tell them you're not coming in.
Oh, is anybody there? There only 1 or 2 in yesterday.
Surround them and cover them with heavy furniture.
Well, some before. I can't get anything now.
So now the phone lines are dead. I guess back in the day, they had the ability to completely cut off phone service, landline service, and reserve that bandwidth or electricity for essential services only. So now you can no longer use the phone. Now, recently in my province, we had a cellular phone outage, which was unplanned. But if we can have an unplanned cellular outage, you can bet your bottom dollar that there'll be a planned cellular outage as well. So this is when you get the suspension of telecoms. That, of course, was foreshadowed earlier in the film where they talked about lines of communication being cut. So now you are landlocked, you are isolated, the fog of war is thick. The only communication you have with the outside world is what the government wants you to hear through the emergency broadcast system.
The line's dead.
I think we ought to be getting the rest of the things out of the cellar now.
That look of horror on her face when she learns that the phone line is dead, as if cut off from life support.
The time has now come to make everything ready for you and your family in case an air attack happens. This does not mean that war is bound to come, but there is a risk of that, and we must all be prepared. When you hear the attack warning, you and your family must take cover at once. Do not stay out.
So back in the day, they didn't really have a lot of information on nuclear weapons and, you know, how it's going to affect human beings. I guess they had information from Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Those were the only two trials where they actually were able to get some insights as to what will happen where along the blast radius zone. So that's what these guys are researching right now. So they are tasked with determining how do we allocate very limited government resources to what will effectively be a war zone.
Hello, County. This is Sheffield District. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Please report my signal. Over.
Well, whose bloody responsibility is it then? We've all got families. Look, just get down here. There's 9 other people. Look, I've got to...
Okay, so that guy on the phone there, he was talking about the situation that I presented earlier when he said, look, we all got families. You need to get down here now. That person didn't want to leave their families, so they went AWOL from their post, essentially. So you're going to have that happen where the restrictions put on these command centers are that you can't bring your family members there. And so this is going to prevent a lot of those services from being administered because the people who are tasked with administering them have decided they're going to stay home and ride out SHTF instead of sacrificing themselves for the greater good.
Serious public order problem. I need at least an extra 6 PSUs. Yeah, but when?
So this guy on the phone, he's looking for power supply units. That's what PSU stands for.
Look, I'm using traffic wardens already.
I don't know how many make it.
All right, then I'll have to swear.
Many of these officers have had no training at all. Some have learned of their emergency role only in the last few days, and almost all are unsure of their exact duties.
5,000 gallons a turn.
Oh, 56%.
I suppose I ought to take this one off as well.
Oh, it'll get scratched to pieces. It's only just been painted, Bill.
Well, it's better than getting blown to pieces, isn't it?
What's it going to school then, Mum? I'm going to be late. Oh, it's on the news. We'll all stay home. Are you sure? Of course I am. Said they were sending notes out to all.
Bloody hell, there's a time.
Great. We had an history test this morning. Listen, go down to Kirby's and see if they've got any food left. Like what? Anything, bread, tin stuff. Bring what you can.
So this is where they start talking about food. And you'll notice that in the last few scenes, there was a lot of people drinking tea, eating food. That is really trying to depict how people are taking these things for granted, even up until the last minute, because they're soon going to become incredibly scarce. So you see milk on the table, you see butter. She just grabbed a piece of bread. You see some cornflakes.
Take me purse. Are you going to build one of these in here? Over my dead body is. I want to know something more definite, Bill, before we start ripping this place to pieces. Can I help you? That'd be great.
Strong disinfectant and toilet paper.
Feel like going camping.
Candles and matches.
The most widespread danger is fallout. Fallout is dust that is sucked up from the ground by the explosion. Fallout can kill.
It's 8:30 a.m., 3:30 in the morning in Washington. Over the past 4 days, neither the president nor his senior staff will have had more than a few hours' rest.
ATMs were just kind of getting started. This was at a period of time where I'd say the vast majority of transactions were still cash-based. This is why this movie is so timeless, because it was released in the early 80s where we just gained initial digital exposure to all of the modern amenities, even though it was very primitive in its form. But here, we're likely going to see cash shortages at the ATM. So people are going to have no way to transact. I would have suspected this would have happened much sooner.
They may be asleep. This is when Western response will be slowest.
So here on the screen, it shows, sorry, no more card cash withdrawals allowed from your account today. So they've basically just said, you can't get money out of your account. Now, is that because there's not enough in the bank? Or has this person put a limit? Has the government imposed limits on how much money you can withdraw? It's very likely that's going to be the case. The majority of people have their money in accounts of big banks, which are, have very close relationships with the feds. So if they wanted to restrict people's access to that money, I mean, even nowadays, if you want to get money out of your account, you can only take so much out every day. And even if you go into the teller, there's a limit on how much cash they're going to have on hand to give you. So this is incredibly prescient. But we have to go back because the narration is saying something even more interesting. Let's hear what they say.
It's 8:30 a.m., 3:30 in the morning in Washington. Over the past 4 days, neither the president nor his senior staff will have had more than a few hours rest. This is when they may be asleep. This is when Western response will be slowest.
So they get right down to the period where a response will be the most vulnerable to do a first nuclear strike. And this is something that takes into account not only the time of day, but the season. When are people going to be most vulnerable? It's going to be in spring when the crops aren't even in the ground yet. Okay, it's not going to be at harvest time, or it's going to be in the dead of winter when people are heavily reliant on the grid in order to stay alive. But even in terms of the time of day, this raises the stakes even higher. And so this almost increases the likelihood that shit's going to hit the fan, because both sides are trying to preempt the other side by seizing upon a vulnerability, which is the result of readiness fatigue. And this is a modern strategy in war, that you use psychological warfare to kind of string the other side along, make them think that you're going to attack, make sure that they haven't slept in days, and then when they're finally starting to nod off in the middle of the night, that's when you attack.
As we expected, nearly all the supermarket shelves are empty, but we've managed to get the warehouses controlled by the police.
Supermarkets are empty. I've talked in my videos before about how you have to go down the supply chain if you want to get stuff. At the tail end of the supply chain is going to be convenience stores, corner stores, things like that. Then you got supermarkets. Then you got the consolidated food centers, where they ship and they distribute groceries to grocery stores. Then you have the manufacturers of individual food products. And you can even go further up the supply chain to the raw materials that are used in those facilities, which usually involves rail to a certain extent, farms, and things of that nature. So that's how you go up the supply chain. The government is going to try to, they know they're not going to be able to control things at the tail end of the supply chain in the stores and the supermarkets. They can get a foothold on the distribution centers, the manufacturing facilities, and of course, the farms.
Yet we haven't located all the root vegetable clumps on local farms, but stocks of sugar, wheat, flour and rice are quite good.
Attack warning? Is it for real? Attack warning's for bloody real.
Is it?
Right, get to your stations. Come on, get yourself. Get that generator.
Okay, so I think this is going to be a good part to end this part of the video, because now, obviously, shit's about to hit the fan. We are going to continue this in part 2, exploring what happens in the peri phase of SHTF, and then we're going to look at what happens in the post-collapse aftermath and how the government fares in terms of the implementations of these plans months, years, decades into the future.
The best way to support this channel is to support yourself by gearing up at CanadianPreparedness.com, where you'll find high-quality survival gear at the best prices, no junk, and no gimmicks. Use discount code PREPPINGGEAR for 10% off. Don't forget, the strong survive, but the prepared thrive. Stay safe.